podcast 83, aka special number last, joined Ezra and Alistair and maybe Pip at some point. Who knows? How you doing, Ezra?
Very, 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 very good.
Looking forward to having a crack at the Sublingual tablet and new facts emerge.
Indeed, I am.
Very good. Alistair, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. TV some nerve endings are sending messages to my brain.
That's good. Well, here's the story so far. Four film friends form band: Post Pistols, F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T, Brammer, Baines, Smith, M, Burns, Riley, Paulet, Burns, Bingo, Witch Trials, Roman Tartal, Bastard Son of etc., Christian, Shanley and Scanlon, Dragnet, Hanley P, Grotesque, Slate, 100%, Hexen, What a Time, Undilutable Slang Truth, Riley, Out. Bricks E. Smith, Perverted. Gav, no. Wonderful and Frightening Escape. Lecky Comes Off the Ashram. Panpipes. Psych Pop. Saving Grace, 27%. Funky Sigh. The Magically Forgotten Ben Sinister. Pain, Dr. Schofield. Michael Clark's Arse. Orange Ballet. Friends. Bricks, Gone. Major Label. Extricate. Brammer, Back. C. Leone. Brammer and Pain Doc, Gone. Shift Work, D. Bush's Mighty Machines, Code Selfish, Top 10 LP, Mediocre Class Revolt, Bricks is back, yeah, Scanlan out, no, Regret, Nagel, Light User, yeah, Bricks is out, boo, Free Fall, Fallout, Levitate, Brownie Fights, Arrest, Abuse, Shame, boo, Shanley out, Game Over. Nope. Crawling from the Abyss, it's the Crying Marshal, Wilding Unutterable, E. Blaney, Missing Winner, Future TLCs, Watts, Pritchard, Birtwistle, the Elaney era. It's the Real New Fall, 92%. Oh, victory is within our grasp, but predictably, Desert Abandonment, Reformation Nadir, Presley et al. Surely it's all over. But the lads, Spur, Melling, Greenway, Imperial Wax, Clutter. Oh, there's that. Remit. Oh, but now the end is near. Sublingual tablet and new facts emerge. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10, baby. 9 out of 10. You give me a 9 out of 10. Well, there you go. There's the story. That's been quite a wild ride, hasn't it?
Been crazy. Crazy as shit. Loads of LPs.
Loads.
All different, but always the same.
Always. So what is it? 30? The Sublingual tablet is 30 officially, depending on how you count. And let's crack on with that one. Should we have a bit of a listen to some of the tracks from Sublingual?
Yeah, go on.
Mercedes, fed up and tedious, loneliness and breadland, olderness. I say it to you? But a check, we're in a good possession here. Because
Yes, for creative body. This is Template. Pledge. Why do you need second-hand friends? Why do you really care who's trending? Or is it?
Well. So there we have it. I know.
The last one's my favourite.
Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? Beautiful. So it is the 30th album by the Fall, released 11th of May 2015, genre post-punk on the Cherry Red label. Producer Marquis Smith. And you know what? If that is true, it's almost certainly not true. I'm pretty sure Simon Ding Archer was responsible for most of it. Their production is splendid. We'll get to that in a minute, though. So it is the last album that we get Eleni on before a big shake-up. And as Leon Jumblesdale pointed out today, the Facebook troll, the dedication, and auto chip and pledge all have considerably different versions depending on what format you've got. Lineup: Marquis Smith, Peter Greenway, Eleni, Dave Spur, Kieran Melling, and Darren Garrett on drums. Second. And Black Roof, it features the comeback of the Reformation Band, Tim Presley and Rob Barbetta, which is arguably better than anything that was on Reformation. Yes, Phil, Pip, what do you make of this record?
Well, for me, personally, this is my favourite later period album. I think this album just oozes cool. I think every single track is so fucking cool in its own way. Whether it's like the production that you've just mentioned or Smithy, especially so late in the game, so on form. The band still quite capable of kicking your face off, as I might say. with some of that lovely squelchy noise stuff. Eleni really, really coming to the front. I can't say enough good stuff about this album, really. Everything from like the Pete Tong stuff to even like, Venice with the Girls. It's such a. I remember I put it on again yesterday to listen to it all the way through, and it's such a fucking consistent, solid album, right from start to finish. It's a real treat. It's a real treat there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, some of the tracks, Black Roofer, Dedication, Younger Cloth, Auto Chip, Pledge, Facebook Troll, highlights. Absolutely classic. The only a couple of missteps is possibly that rip-off of Stoutman, but that made me laugh. Big fat man.
Stoutman is very, very
pushing
funny.
A little pram.
We even had Invisible Stew panicking, having a panic yesterday, saying, "Did Black Roof go through?" And it is, I must admit, when that tune comes on, it's just so immense. Yeah,
that's great. And the album, I think, is very much Eleni is really knocking out of the park on every track. These long synth driven. I'm assuming she's on all of those. I'm assuming that's her stuff. But Ezra, what do you make to Sub-Lingual?
Yeah, I was really, really happy that I saved listening to this album in its entirety the way God and Marky Smith intended until we came around to do this show, as I have been with all the F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T albums since we started this podcast that I haven't heard. And it's so fucking good. Like there's, as far as I'm concerned, there's not a thing that's wrong with this album at all. Like, and it's so interesting because, they started with Imperial Wax, which was pretty solid record. And it's kind of like, I don't know, I guess it's, when you get like a new gadget, like a new synth or an effects pedal or a guitar, and you're noodling away, or, even some like art material or something, and you do something and it's fucking brilliant. And then, like you come back to it and you just can't find that again. It seems like that happened with the lads, like, the cross of Remit and what was the other one? The other one, Ersatz GP.
Your Future.
Ersatz GP. Well, yeah, I mean, on Your Future, Our Clutter, there's, they're definitely getting it together. There's some very
partial. You're quite partial to that one, though, Ezra, aren't you? Your Future.
I am partial to that one. Yeah, I'm quite partial, you might say, as you did say. And you wouldn't be wrong, because quite is exactly the word for it. And quite is exactly the word for how good I would say it is. It's quite good. But here, like, even the tracks that, maybe don't quite hit it as hard as they could, they just gleam in companionship with the real fucking stonkers. And not only that, like, I think it's got one of the best full album covers of their entire career. Like, it's a perfectly beautiful cover of some strange orb, like shooting out beams of light with what could be an eye in the center, and the title Sub-Lingual tablet. Like, I did have to check the definition of lingual, and lingual, adjective, technical, meaning one, anatomy, relating to, near, or on, the side, towards the tongue. 2, relating to speech or language. His demonstrations of lingual dexterity. So obviously this was a medicated Mark album, and medicated in the sense of national health medicated, probably as well as all his normal medications, which were maybe not prescribed by the NHS.
Complementary medication.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, I would echo what was said. Like, I feel like Eleni is really driving it here, and she drives it so well. Like, those beautiful, meaty fucking synth hooks all the way through this album. There are some songs I'm very sad got voted off. If I'm not mistaken, Younger Cloth got the boot, which is a great shame. I think that's a real champion track. And yeah, it is just a thorough, good album.
Oh,
Yeah,
then what
yeah.
it lost out to, hit out man.
Yeah, Hit Time Man put Younger Cloth out, it was a close one, I remember. And New Facts Emerged, the song put out Black Roof. So that shows how unfamiliar I was with those
Stupid we
tracks.
are.
Well, the thing is, with the early ones, I can kind of, fudge it a little bit so the big hitters don't go up against each other. But I just didn't know this era well enough to kind of do that before going into it. But I learned. I lived and I learned. Now, here's a man who didn't need to look up what a sublingual tablet was. Alistair, you knew, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I've been aware of them for many years, but that's a professional thing, so yeah. But yeah, it's really good LP, and it's as you mentioned before, the recording of it is brilliant, and it's quite experimental at times, which I do like, because I don't like sort of like hearing something that's just dead pedestrian and kind of like predictable, a bit like colouring in or something like that, so there's quite a bit of creativity that I like. But yeah, Black Reef, bloody brilliant on that one. Shame that one's gone.
It's not.
Yeah, but there's lots of really strong ones on there. I mean, I do be a Pledge being played on WFMU quite a bit. Plug again. Normally when they're doing the fundraisers, so it's always nice to have Smithy going bonkers on the airwaves. But yeah, I would recommend anybody out there listen to WFMU. Ken's show, Station Manager Ken, it's always good. Learn about the diarrhea lady in the WFMU abortion clinic. But yeah, it is just a really, really good LP. Stuff like Quit iPhone, great. Pledge, Younger Cloth, Statement. First one today, which is about having a poo. I think Stateman's about having a poo as well after you've had a few states.
They're all about it. It's a concept album.
Well, yeah, and then the Younger Cloth was originally called Touching Cloth. And then you have to use a Pledge to sort of like clean stuff up afterwards. But yeah, damn good LP.
There is the idea that at least a few of them hang together with the technology kind of thing. Obviously Quit iPhone and Facebook Troll, and Pledge seems to be about, kind of Kickstarters and stuff, and Kidnap Bono Pledge. But there's that Lovely Eggs thing was just released at one episode where they're talking to Tim Presley, and he's got a bunch of sublingual tablets all around his room, and they focus on it. So I wonder whether that was a particular reference to the version he was taking, which I think will for opioid dependency and stuff like that. So, or I wonder whether Smith was getting some as part of his kind of treatment, but the tablet being more like the technology side for me as well. So like you said, Ezra, there's a language side, but there's also the medication. There's that, and then there's the tech side going on. So I think there's there's a few themes running through. Absolutely, but it means it's an absolute storm.
It's surprisingly crisp, the artwork on it as well, isn't it? For a fall cover, it's
yeah. There's not many that are this slick and simple, but it fits absolutely, and that's been one of the things we've come through with the hour. No matter how wonky or straightforward it is, it usually fits pretty well with the music, and I think it's a good choice. Here's a review. Pip. The new album from the fall, one knows more or less exactly what to expect, is a perfectly satisfactory release from the group. The consistency is what has made the bread and butter for the fall for decades. The major frustration is the subject matter. Anyone who's heard the fall before knows that Mark Smith's lyrics are abstract, but with his drawling heavy accent making the lyrics impossible to decipher. It looks at culture through the eyes of a man who was ranting about the music scene as far back as the 70s. Yet the most coherent messages one can find are that Smith thinks prescription drugs aren't freely prescribed enough, and he doesn't like smartphones. It quite honestly sounds like it could have come from any period in the band's history. There's nothing wrong, but one wonders what would happen if Smith set his sights a little bit higher.
Well, I think I'd want to respond to P. Brosnan. How dare you prescribe? This is they've missed the mark by a country mile here, haven't they? It's an amazing renaissance for the band, this album. I think it's probably the most consistent album. Here we go, here's a claim. Most consistent album since Hex Induction album.
That's what every single person says for every album, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I've not said it before, but I'm going to say it about this album. I agree with what Ezra said before. There's no missteps on it at all. And even though they do push the boat out experimentally, like Younger Cloth, how long's the introduction of Younger Cloth before he actually starts singing on it? Or, like some of the fuzzed out production that's on those synth noises as well. I was trying to think back. This is one of the albums that got me back into listening to The Fall after taking a bit of a hiatus from them. And I'm pretty sure it's Dedication, Not Medication, that got me into it. I think it came on at random on a recommend or something. And as soon as he comes out with that line, Pierce Brosnan, how dare you prescribe? It's like, oh yeah, I'm in for a penny and for a pound.
Wet pills. And
that's the bass. The bass, the way that he straddles that analog playing style, but with a completely dancey feel to it. It sounds like a techno track, but to me, I think it's the bass playing is what comes back to the fore in this album. It's back like the good old days with Hanley, isn't it? And you've got that sense of depth and a real sort of thick, fat, noisy, nasty bass tone going on in the songs. I think that's what livens it up. That and Delaney, I think, are what made the album.
I get a feeling that Dave Spur was heavily involved in the songwriting, especially around this era. And it's like, yeah, Smith was letting him run 5-6 minutes from a lot of these. Facebook Troll and Fledger all 5-6, Auto Chip's 10 minutes long. So it's but it doesn't outstay its welcome at all. Not in the slightest. How about this one for you, Ezra? Too comfortable. This lineup is too comfortable to rank with the best iterations of the Fall. It's a little bit Fall by numbers. The bass grinds, the keyboards do spindly patterns, and Smith grumbles incomprehensibly. But some surprising influence from West African pop. Smith's voice at times sounding like it did in 1987. This won't be the last we hear from the Fall. I'm sure they'll pump out albums for years to come. At first, I thought, this is great, but perhaps if you captured the intensity of the live gigs, it would have been even better. Pretty good, almost up there with Imperial Wax Solvent.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe, an eighth of the way to the truth there. Interesting to hear about the West African pop idea, but yeah, this whole, and it's like the one that Pip had, this whole concept of Fall by numbers, I really don't think applies here. I mean, if you've been listening to the albums like we've all done, my first takeaway of Sublingual Tablet was thinking, well, you can imagine a Fall fan listening to Remit or Ersatz GB or Your Future Our Clutter and thinking, oh, yeah, this is a decent Fall album. But I don't imagine they would have netted many fans off the back of them albums. But a person who was a total Fall virgin could listen to Sublingual Tablet and fall straight down the rabbit hole. That was my takeaway. That was the first thing I thought when the album finished. I was like, yeah, they could and probably did win fans off the back of this record. Like I can admire, I can enjoy Ersatz and Remit, but I can't really imagine that they would have won all that many fans, because there's a sense of the future here. Like a lot of the songs and a lot of the arrangements are quite unlike anything that the lads did before, the lads and Elaney did before, and they're also quite unlike anything the Fall have done before. So for me, this is like heads and shoulders of this era above most of the rest of it.
I agree. If I'm giving anyone an album from the post 2000, it's this one and Real New Fall album. Those two, I give them those, and then dipping back into This Nation's Saving Grace and Hex, and like giving someone those four albums. If you like anything about that, then you're gonna like the Fall. But I mean, yeah, absolute top
What's
notch
the West
stuff.
African thing getting at? Because
I think,
we were talking about High Life a couple of weeks ago, weren't we?
yeah. So, well, I mean, Hittite Man is not on here, but it's that kind of vibe, and I think maybe Younger Cloth or one of the others has a little bit of something about it. I can't.
Hittite Man's got like that, maybe like North African, like that
Yeah,
Moroccan
the
or
Saharan kind of thing, but yeah, that's. I'm not really sure specifically. I think they were
There's
talking about
nothing
young.
that jumps out at me that's got that kind of style of guitar playing. 'Cause one of the things I was listening to as I re-listened to Sublingual Tablet, and the guitar's quite noisy and aggressive, but it's like what I've said before. I think Greenway, he's a better player when he's complementing other melodic ideas that are going on. I think he struggles a bit when he's the sole kind of melodic thing going on in the song, but it's when he's playing along with Eleni, it really brings the best out of him.
I get that feeling too. Like when the lights just shone on him, he trots out the same kind of few riffs. But when he's in his in a certain setup, and actually when we get to 9 out of 10 on the last album, things like that as well, he's definitely got a lot of creative ways to express himself. It's just that Smith didn't always put him in positions where.
Yeah, maybe that's true. Maybe it is a case of bad management rather than.
But Smith didn't. What Smith wanted the chugging, like kind of almost generic kind of guitar riffage. I'm pretty sure.
The 9 out of 10 is like the exception that proves the rule to what I've just said as well.
A little bit. It's the total opposite, but it allows it puts him in a position where he can do like literally whatever. And when you do that he's like, this is what I would do given a blank canvas kind of thing. And yeah.
What do you think of the drums on this album? Because it feels really dancey to me, this album.
It's just is it a complete package? Brilliant. I mentioned the recording before. That's brilliant. The playing, I cannot fault really. Like, you know, it's fairly standard at times. Like, but you know, there's a kind of a fairly varied feel to the LP, isn't there? Really.
Yeah, because we talked about the Noi kind of motoric stuff on things like Auto Chip when it came around, and I think at this point they kind of know what Smith's kind of strands of what he's wanting. But interesting. We get to the next one. I think they get a little bit more say in what they're doing. But here it's like I think the mission for the record was those long grooves, and they all step up and do what they need to. What about this, Al? This is from Pitchfork. On Sublingual Tablet, even the customary pop culture references feel dated and oddly out of place. This iteration of the Fall is lacking in camaraderie, and they are the world's most cantankerous jam band. They produce their most vital work when they stick to rock song schematics while scribbling between the lines, but they are often casting out without any kind of clear destination in sight.
I think that's quite misguided, isn't it, really? Going on about the cultural references being dated. I mean, he's going on about iPhones and stuff like that. I didn't have a bloody iPhone then. You know, that's...
Get out Facebook!
and like calling them a jam band, like from that LP, it sounds really well worked out. It's not jammed out. There's some like, you know, there is stuff that, you know, where they are just sort of like repeating. It just sounds dead jammy like, but not on that LP.
It's not. It's a groove-based thing, isn't it? They're not jamming out like
the stuff that's the best on there is the rocky stuff. That's a lot of bollocks, isn't it? You know, I think they've only listened to it once, haven't they?
Only listened to it once,
and they're going by preconceived ideas of the Fall.
I would like to start a cantankerous jam band, though.
The world's most cantankerous jam band.
I mean, as long as I get an 18-minute space rock solo.
Oh, that's the minimum.
Space rock and frown at the same time.
Oh yeah. I'm a middle-aged man, of course I can.
He just did an episode on the Grateful Dead that was 4.5 hours long, and there was a lot of cantankerous jamming going on there. But we all know how we feel about the Dead.
Darkest of stars.
In between this and the next album, they did record the EP "Wise Old Man," which is pretty cool, and that's the very last thing that Eleni played on. But obviously, before we even talk about that, we want to know if Stu has any opinions on Sublingual Tablet.
Well, after being in deep communion with him, I know that he's got some thoughts about both this and All Wise Man, but I'll save that one till we get to the.
All righty.
Sublingual Tablet is put. Although I think Remit is the best of the late albums in terms of consistency and variety. The last two albums are great and they're all right, and I've had a lot of fun with them this week. No more wafer-thin comedy numbers, lots of vocal gymnastics and soft lad mutterings. I like this one all the way through. Although Stokeman is pretty throwaway, other than the funny line about the fat bloke pushing the pram. But I'll take this tribute to a Bad Stooges cover over 90% of the covers in the catalogue. Auto Chip surprised me this afternoon when I recognised Reformation in it. Large scale and jammy with the same sort of instrumental variation and building that didn't work in the recording of TLC, but here sounds great. I love the straightforward rockers and think that the sound is pretty good too. I've had it on about 6 times this week, and it's been and I've not been tempted to skip around at all. Good shit.
No, absolutely. I listened to it front to back a good few times, and yeah, it's great stuff. But before we get on to the last album, before we get into New Facts Emerge, I want to play. I had a good listen to All Leave Cancelled again, which is one of the first. It's off Wise Online. It's one of the first really weird fall songs that we'd come across in the pod, and I don't think any of us had really heard it or spent very much time with it. And it is quite beautiful and similar to what they do in the last album, where there's a collage of multiple songs going on. So have a listen to that. Then we'll move on to New Facts. You play that to anyone and say, what band is that? I'd give you a pound if you guess the Fall. I'm calling it. I think this is going a good chunk of the way. We'll see, won't we? All right, so that does bring us to the final album, LP31.
Do you want me to tell you what Stu thinks of Wise Old Man?
Does he? Oh, he has opinions on that. You mentioned that, didn't you? What does he think about the Wise Old Man EP? The last appearance of Eleni, sadly.
It's going to be a bit spicy, I think. This is a bit disappointing. I picked it up in a shop when it launched and just put it back again when I realised they wanted £10 for 2 songs and some sawdust sweep up from the last sessions. Similarly, it gets on my tits a bit with that last album. It has so many differences between the CD and the vinyl version, instead of just making available in one spot. Other than that, this is really not essential at all, which is a shame.
It is a shame, but I think that track is worth it. It's worth a tenner. Or just listen to it for free on Spotify, you dingus.
He's too busy listening to, his
Ligeti. Too busy listening to Ligeti symphonies all day. Peter Brotzman, rest in peace. Final studio album from released in July 2017, and it was recorded over the course of 2016, 2017. Alternative rock. Produced apparently by Kieran, the drummer, along with Mark, and lineup: Mark Smith, Greenway, Spur, Melling, just the 4 of them. And they did eventually pick up another keyboardist before they called it a day. And but why don't we have a little bit of a listen to some of the tracks off the New Facts Emerge.
Christmas bolero, bolero.
We had no residence. We had no reservation. We had.
Hold on a minute.
We had no playbook.
Torches in their big house. Thinking and looking naked. This is relevant to your late.
Nine out of 10, they gave me. 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10, they gave me. 9 out of 10. Man, come and listen to my story. From when I started.
Oof. Chalk and cheese. Delicious chalk and delicious cheese. What do you make of this, Staff Pippin?
Delicious chalk, delicious cheese. It comes straight out of the gates, doesn't it? It's so powerful, the start of this album, and it builds up a head of steam straight away. There's the cheeky misstep right at the start with segue, but as soon as F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T starts, it's 110%. It's really, really noisy and aggressive and powerful. And it's incredible to think about what his state of health is at this time, and just how much spit and vinegar he's managing to throw into the mix of it all. It's, for me, it's a bit of a game of two halves, the album. I think the first half, and I did wonder to myself, actually, as I was listening to this, I wonder in Mark's head whether he was still approaching albums as A-sides and B-sides, or whether it was just like a CD track listing now and it's just a list of songs. Because to me, it feels like two sides, this. And the first half is just relentless punching. It's great. It's really good for it. It builds up momentum and sticks with it. And then you hit what's it called? Second House Now. And it just kind of slides a little bit. For me, the consistency goes at this point. It becomes a little bit self-indulgent, Mark. And I think if you're a Fall fan, you totally forgive him all that. And you're kind of in for a penny, in for a pound with the whole experience. The next couple of tracks pull it back, but Grounds Boy again, it's like, oh, another one of these. It's like Luke 41 or something, or one of those really dreary country tracks. And then you've got this magnum opus at the end, which is such a great swan song. It's this absolute, perfectly crafted climax to such an incredible, idiosyncratic and eccentric career that is really just all about integrity. And he does it. He does it right to the end. He manages to do it. And it's one of those things that not many folks did. So I think the album is a fitting tribute, and you forgive him his indulgences in that second half, and you just feel like he's sorely missed as soon as it all finishes. But it's a remarkable album for the circumstances that it comes out in. But even if you didn't know the context of it, the first half of the album is brilliant. It's just a really, really good rock album.
It's really raw, and it's got way more bits of kind of the stuff that the lads, I think, liked, the doomy, the metally stuff. Very little of that has appeared before this. And I feel like this is the record where they were almost allowed to express themselves finally, for whatever reason, whether Mark just wasn't there or whether he that was just how he was feeling at the time. But in the same way that something like the early stuff, the really early stuff where Craig and Steve were just allowed to express themselves, and Carl Burns, and this is what it felt like. And this is like, okay, if you just gave those three lads some time and said, make a Fall record, you've been the Fall for a decade now, make a Fall record, they'd make this. And it's really, really good. And the production's awesome, and it's super raw. And 9 out of 10 is an absolutely perfect way, because it's so counterintuitive to have just Smith and a guitar, and then 6 minutes of just a solo guitar. But yeah, Ezra, what do you make of New Facts Emerge?
Well, it's such an interesting one, this. Like, for me anyways, you think about like the Fall albums, and of course on every Fall album you're gonna have the kind of like outlier tracks. And somehow for this one, for me, normally the outlier tracks would be the ones that would grow on you slowly, or you'd at least come to accept them. Like what's that one at the end of Code Selfish? Crap Team, like Skit, or, on Grotesque, you've got WMC and maybe In the Park as well. Like they're kind of weird fractions and like fragments of like, kitchen sink noise and what have you. But here, like with this album, it's those tracks that I like head and shoulders above all the other ones. All the other ones. Segway, just for its totally fucking fantastic wrongness. Couples versus Jobless, I'll come back to, but there we've got Oztrick Man, which I think, like the backing music on that is possibly my favorite music on this album. And of course, 9 out of 10, which is peerless stuff. And yeah, like I like the rocking stuff. I like Folderol, and I like New Facts Emerge quite well. But I feel like after the previous album, where you had like essentially a new Fall sound, to be falling back on this kind of meat and potatoes like rock riffarama is a little disappointing to my ears. But the good thing about this album, and the thing which makes it well worth listening to all the way through, is just as on Sub-Lingual, like Mark brings his total fucking A game. And I think a lot of what let down, for me at least, things like Remit and Ersatz GB, is the sense that maybe he's not super into it, or as super into it as he should be. And so there's a little bit of a loosening of the quality control, and just a sense of, all right, this is, we've done it, it's good enough, get it out. Whereas here, similar to Sublingual, the quality control is tight. I can whinge and crap on about meat and potatoes rock, but it all sounds good. He sounds amazing, and he elevates all those slightly more boring tracks for me. I just wish that they'd brought up the musical backing to Zittrick Man a little more, because I do think that, like, I mean, listening to it, I was like, wow, that's, the backing sounds fucking ace. Bring it up, bring it up. But of course they don't, because they're the Fall. So, and again, it's a fucking smashing cover. Like the last two, the covers, beautiful, beautiful artwork, smashing, great, good stuff.
Yeah, and again, I think that scratchy, graffiti kind of almost early 80s kind of style fits it well.
Can I just poke Ezra and say talk about couples versus jobless?
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about it before when you were playing around the tracks. Have you come across Jean-Claude Vanier, the guy who did the arrangement for Melody Nelson for Serge Gainsbourg?
Yeah.
He did some solo albums. The first one. It really just that really higgledy-piggledy arrangement where it's quite operatic and baroque at the same time, and it's like it just really reminded me of that album we were playing it through. But let me port you, Ezra. Talk about couples versus jobless 30.
Yeah, like I kind of, like listening to it, I felt like if they'd have done couples versus jobless, that kind of prog doom business, part 1, 2, and 3, and maybe kicked out, I don't know, Grounds Boy and Second House Now, that would be a fantastic, perfect final fall album.
I think the collage nature, like I said, All Leave Cancelled, I think follows a similar idea in this one very much. There's like 5 tracks together, and I feel like he made the instrumental. So it wasn't 5 finished tracks that he chopped up. It was the 5 instrumentals he put, and then he kind of, like you're saying, Phil, he kind of orchestrated it so that then he could kind of run over the top of all of these different styles and bits, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I think like I can imagine a place where that developed further, and the next record is 4 12-minute tracks that all do that, and like that's the number 1 song in heaven, isn't it? Alistair, what do you make of the New Facts Emerge LP by The Fall?
Yeah, so it's a good one. I've been listening to the vinyl of it, which is quite a nice sort of thing. It's a 10-inch vinyl, double LP kind of thing. So you do get to the thing where you kind of identify which song is from what side, and it's like, oh, that's the last one on side 2 kind of thing, which you don't get with CDs. You don't get with streaming either. So that was quite a nice thing. And seeing, that side 4 is basically just Grounds Boy and 9 out of 10. But I think 9 out of 10, I don't really like it. Yeah.
Fight.
The guitar.
To be honest, we did vote it out. So
yeah, we did. I don't think I give it too much love then either. But yeah, couples. This is Jobless Mid-30s is a genuinely odd epic, like sort of starting off like Black Sabbath, then getting into like the mad sort of Diary of a Madman breakdown bit, and then finishing off sounding like the Ventures, crazy stuff. And Second House Now and Grounds Boy, they both remind me of the legendary Stardust Cowboy, which I don't mind personally, but like stuff like F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T, really good. The song New Facts Emerge, absolutely rocking, isn't it? It's proper sort of balls to the wall. So for the last LP, it does sound like Smith. His health problems might have prevented him from being quite as hands-on, and that's why you got a slightly different sound at times on it. But all in all, damn good LP.
Yeah, indeed. What does our friend on the other side think? Is he on his tuppence in?
Oh yes, he definitely.
Are you
has.
naked there, Phil? Are you nude?
Yes.
Again.
What's wrong? There's nothing wrong with a grown man sitting naked in his own house.
Just lift your camera up a bit. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, is it on? A great final hurrah. What strikes me about this last record is how joyful it all sounds. There aren't too many fall LPs in the catalogue which sound like the people making it are having a great deal of fun. And I've had a shit-eating grin on my face every time this has accompanied me this week. I think a lot of the riffs and core ideas are quite simple, and it's a very rockish record in many ways, but the production choices, the cut-ups, the weird arrangements, the flow of the album, they all add so much to the experience. If I'm being critical, I still find the last 4 minutes of the final song undermine the main opening section a bit, and I think it would be a lot more powerful without it. Other than that, I could happily have this on repeat. R.I.P. Mez.
It's one of the things I'd like to say as well about it is it's the vocal timing and delivery. The delivery is fucking awesome on this. He's like really sort of using the growling Hitler-esque kind of thing to its best, really.
It is, and I'd add to that as well. I would, because it's not like some of those earlier what do you call it? Where like the Pro Tools kind of production, where they're obviously chopping the vocal up and stuff. It's all live. He's obviously doing it to the music, but it just amazes me the amount of power he manages to get given sort of where he's at.
Yeah, well, I'm going to play a version of Stoutman from the very last gig he played, and one of the things that people said right up until the end, we've all seen the pictures of him in the wheelchair and playing those last few gigs in 2017, and just the power, and we've said the raging against the dying of the light. It's very much the case. It's it's not anything like David Bowie's kind of Black Star, the last album he did, but that idea that you are maybe that this is your last chance to do something and say something, and you're not going to let it slip by. I think that goes through the album. So as far as I know, that's the last song from the final gig they played, which was November the 4th, 2017 in Glasgow. And as usual, that wasn't even on the set list. But they pulled it out.
Just look at that set list though, for a band that's been going so long, and it's like this is the last gig they ever play, and it's not a nostalgia. It's not a nostalgia list, is it? It's not all shit off like the first couple of albums. This is like the last album in the last couple of albums.
Phil, read out the track listing for the.
Here we go. So here's what they had on the set list: was Wolf Kid Up Man, Over, False Sound, Blindness, Brillo de Facto. First one today, Dedication, Folder Roll, Grounds Boy, Second House Now, New Facts Emerge. 2014, which would Auto-Chip, I guess, and Berry. So they were planning to finish with Berry. What they actually played was Wolf Kid Up Man, Over, False Sound, Blindness, Brillo de Facto. First one today, Dedication, Folder Roll, Grounds Boy, Second House Now, New Facts Emerge, Auto-Chip, Berry. And then they came back on for Stoutman. But yeah, mostly the new album. And that's the thing, right? A couple of choice tracks, but mostly the album. I want to talk a little bit about the very end of the band, but I'm going to throw a couple of reviews your way, Alistair. The project moves forward, almost cavalier disregard for their past accomplishments, while their contemporaries like Peter Hook and the Buzzcocks while away their careers, reliving former glory. The Fall continue to move forward. Although someone who hears their new album might be something at a disadvantage because anyone discovering New Facts Emerge might wonder what all the fuss is about. The sticking point for anybody is the current state of Marky Smith's voice. Long gone is the untrained but charming voice that barked and squealed. It's been replaced by a bilious and phlegmy growl and many, many cigarettes. It's not an easy sound to get used to, but he seems to take pleasure in drawing sounds out in a menacing way.
It's not a bad review. I mean, to get some good points across, definitely about the people like Peter Hook and Pete Shelley sort of just, living off the back catalogues where, the F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T did carry on creating new stuff. But I do remember Peter Hook saying that you only have so many riffs in your bank, and once you've sort of used them all up, you really struggle to write new, interesting sounding stuff. And I suppose once you got a band that's changed in lineups as often as the F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T did, you can keep that spark, you can keep that creativity. But yeah, stuff about the voice, that's bang on as well. And just the whole sound of it is decent, like, but I do think you can play that LP to, at least some of the songs off to people who aren't aware of the F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T, and they might show some interest. Especially like couples, Jobless Mid-30s and Below De Facto, the Papa Rockers.
Absolutely.
Keeping it interesting.
That's the thing, changing. But even though that band have been together a good few years, there's still a big range in those last two albums. How about this one for you, Ezra? I have no idea what what the fuck Mark E. Smith is talking about, because he gave up on proper enunciation 3 records ago. Smith's current bandmates are a meaty, swollen approach to garage rock that leaves ample room for diversions into psych and rockabilly. I listened for new facts emerge, waiting for some spark of the group, but the group I love more than any other is politely sitting through a bunch of unmemorable and downright ugly songs that repeatedly test my patience. Smith spends most of the album like he's gargling beer and broken teeth. This is far from a tragedy. Marquis Smith's defiant endurance has become something of a wry joke shared between artists and fans, with his stubborn insistence that the band just keeps getting better and better. I'm glad he's still out there doing the work. The work sounds terrible, but I'm comforted that it exists. Fighting talk, innit?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, with the best will I can muster, I feel like he's almost halfway right. I mean, anybody who's been listening to the Fall at this point, they know and they want to hear the sound of beer and broken teeth being gargled. I certainly did and do. And yeah, like lyrically and vocally, I think the best, as I said, the best thing in the album for me is what Smith's bringing to the table, and he's really fucking bringing it. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, the thing that kind of insults me a bit about this album is if I put myself in the shoes of the artist, I'm like, this dude is basically insinuating that the fans are now in it for the kind of train wreck aspect, and just the kind of like, oh look, he's that fucked up and he's made it out of bed onto stage to like fall over and whatever. And yeah, I think that's a poor attitude. I wouldn't go and see a band that I liked because they were fucked or the singer was fucked just to like, just to revel in the fucking ruin of it all. Yeah, like I liked the Fall for a good few years, and like, in fact, like any other singer, the thing that I like about listening to a band or an MC or a singer over a period of years is the way their voice changes. And yeah, it's always interesting and good though. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, this is pretty fucking disrespectful.
Disrespectful. Boo. I agree. Moving on. What about this one from you, Pip? For you, not from you, although you may have written it in one of your sprees online. My first thought was I like this LP because it sounds like Carl Burns is playing. I'm not sure it really does, but Kieran Melling is nailing that Burns kind of way. Marquis Smith, however, is dying. People who saw his last gig at the 100 Club say he's aged 30 years in the past 12 months, putting him at a solid 150. Smith was venerated and lionized by so many people who should have known better. His main problem was he developed a destructive dependency on amphetamines that disfigured his mind and utterly fucked his behavior. He died a horrible death in squalor. He never had kids. He never learned to drive. But invariably is held up as some kind of man's man. A bizarre paternalistic present in what? Indie music? Musical creativity? Fuck knows. He was in fact pathetic, a bad person by any sensible metric, who made a ton of boring music with a terrible hit to shit ratio. What this album does not have is anything that would go beyond more of the same, even if it is delivered with a little bit of a punch in the face. Disrespectful, somebody said.
Yeah, it feels a bit Pearl Punchy, this, doesn't it? It feels like it's been written by a Snow Patrol fan, maybe. Someone in the like late 30s.
A youngster.
Yeah, that's what I mean. An old youngster. No, I don't agree with any of this at all. They're a million miles off the mark. Maybe the Burns thing, in terms of the drumming on the album, and it's up there. It's the drummer who produced it, I think, isn't it? You said that before.
It's Kieran apparently, but I think Simon Archer was doing engineering and knowing how these things work. I think he might have had a lot of say in both those last two albums.
Yeah, so maybe on that, but everything else I think is miles off. And I was thinking about what Ezra was saying about going to gigs as some kind of freak show as well. It's very interesting reports that I've read of the people who were there at that last gig. It's all like cheering Mark on.
Absolutely,
it's all done. I remember I saw Daniel Johnson twice, and the first time that I saw him in London, and it was a wonderful gig. It was a huge venue, and everybody sat on the floor, and it was a really cool vibe. In fact, I was sat next to Jerry.
Right.
That gig.
Everett
First
Tree.
time that I met him, yeah. And I went to watch him again a couple of years later in Manchester at a smaller venue. And it was like people didn't go to the front. It was like people were watching some kind of spectacle rather than a gig. And the atmosphere was very, very different. So I'm aware that does happen from time to time, that people can go watching an artist just because they think there's some kind of freak in the worst possible sense. But that is not the case with Mikey Smith. He set his stall out right from the off in terms of being what punk is supposed to be about, isn't it? And he's one of the few that got there.
Well, this is why. Go ahead.
Going back to the BBC documentary. I can't remember what it was called, but there's a bit of John Peel on there going on about Fall Live and saying like it's one of the scariest sort of things. The atmosphere in there is anything could happen. It seemed volatile, and like going on about like the later gigs. I mean, Brownies, for fuck's sake, that was ages before. They've always had that kind of unpredictable element to them. But yeah, I mean, people did go watching, you go watching the likes of G.G. Allen just for the sake of seeing what the fuck he's up to. But with the Fall, no, you go for the music, and it's just like, it is what it is.
Oh, absolutely. I picked this review because it was so far off the mark. It was just like proper, like someone who absolutely doesn't get it. I mean, that's the whole purpose of me pulling out these contentious reviews. So I thought I'd end with the most contentious, the one who absolutely just shits all over. But gets 100% wrong. Mark Smith. There's a magical bunch of albums and songs. We just, we're 2 years into this and we barely scraped the surface of these songs. And like, this is the end of the kind of journey of looking at the albums. So that was the last album. It was they played a bunch of gigs afterwards, and then very early into 2018. Mark passed away. So 24th of January. So just over 5 years ago now, which is and as the natural end of the band, that it finished. There was no way that band was continuing. Once Smith was gone. There was, there's very few bands like that couldn't.
Do you remember when the Doors got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and they got Eddie Vedder to sing for them?
And as bad as that is,
could they not get Eddie Vedder to bring the Fall back?
That's what I mean. So when they played that gig with Damo,
that's an interesting one. Like when the Fall get into the Hall of Fame, as they damn well fucking should, if it's got any meaning to it whatsoever. of you gentlemen, who would you see sing in Mark E. Smith's shoes?
Sexton Ming.
I mean, yes, it's like it'd have to be some kind of someone who got it, but no, I don't. I cannot think of a single person that could get it and do it.
I think it's got to be somebody who's genuinely French.
I would vote for Stuart Lee.
Have you ever heard him do his songs though? They're proper shit. Like they're like folky country kind of songs. You know what you could do?
Have you ever heard Marky Smith do his songs?
I'll give you Stuart Lee.
Have you heard Blue Christmas?
Stuart Lee doing like one of those bits about like naan breads or whatever it was for 45 minutes, or doing the bit
about the naan breads.
It's all down his front, and like just doing that. Yeah, I could see that would be good. So you'd have to do something like that. Somebody who did something that was perfectly in the spirit of Smith.
Frank Skinner.
Michael Hutchence.
He's a singer. Three Lions.
Number one. Smith never had a number one, did he? Now, if you can indulge me for a few minutes, I put together some data of the first round. You see the screen there, chaps? Or
Invisible's got some words about this as well.
About the data? Or yeah, me and him had a little bit of a chat about it. So essentially, I've crunched the numbers, and this is what we came out with at the end of the first round. Where to start? There's so much information. If I go with the first era, slates, 100% of slates went through, and only 27%, that's only 3 songs out of This Nation's Saving Grace. Slates only had 6 songs, so actually Hex got the most songs through, and Grotesque both had 9 songs through. Witch Trials and This Nation's Saving Grace only 3 songs, but everything off slates went through, and almost everything off Hex. I'm Perverted by Language for that matter.
So
I'm surprised. If you'd have asked me at the start, I would have put Witch Trials at the bottom. I probably wouldn't have put This Nation's Saving Grace at the very bottom. I probably wouldn't have put it in the bottom half, to be honest.
It did even worse if you kept taking into account all the bonus tracks and stuff, because almost nothing went through off it. But I think it just, as an album, it holds together well. But the songs, we've said it a bunch of times, maybe the songs aren't quite there, and the production puts us off. If we get into the second era, you got Code Selfish only got 4 songs through, and
how the fuck is Seminole got 80% through?
Because Seminole only has 5 songs on it, and 4 of them went through. The only song off Seminole that didn't go through, everything, like Mollusk in Tyrol and whatever else the fuck is on that.
That's glided.
It was Pinball Machine that didn't go through, right?
Yeah, Pinball Machine didn't go through, but
awful.
It is, but yeah. Seminole, Deadbeat Descendant, HOW, Squid Law, Mollusk and Tyrol, and then the bonus tracks, Life Just Bounces and I African Mancunian, all went through. Pinball Machine's the only thing that didn't go through, wasn't it? And then it was much of a muchness there anyway. Ben Sinister got
78% of Ben Sinister's gone through, but I can't remember a single track.
Yeah. Bournemouth Runner, I'm sure I can remember that one. Then we get into the proper middle area where like half of all the tracks albums went through, but because there wasn't really a standout in that third era. Middle Class Revolt got half of its songs through, and Cerebral Cost, it wasn't much more. And then we get into the last era, where Real New Fall LP just totally dominated. It's like 11 of the 12 tracks went through. And then Imperial Wax and Sublingual Tablet did really well from that. And then Reformation, predictably, although we kept saying nice things and how much we liked it, in the end, only 3 of the 14 tracks managed to make it through. So, yeah.
It's still a shit album.
I know. But here we go. So if we put all the albums in from front to back, now it's not really fair because, of course, they were in eras. So it doesn't mean that Witch Trials is worse than Middle Class Revolt or whatever. But right down at the bottom, only 20% of Reformation went through, and This Nation's Saving Grace 25%. Right at the top, all of Slate's 90% of Real New Fall and Hex, Perverted by Language, all good.
Seminole just looks so out of place.
Well, you see, Seminole, when you do it by percentage, it's right up there, but when you do it by number of tracks, it's where it should be. It's right down towards the bottom. Only 4 songs went through. So that was interesting to see, but I don't know if I learned too much from that. But anyway, I think that's the whole thing. Any reflections on the entire journey? We've listened to every song, we've listened to every album, and now we can move forward to the competition proper.
So Stu said, Slate's getting every song through is pleasing, although the cost of my dear words of expectation. You will be missed.
Yes. Yeah. The only thing off Hex that didn't go through is who makes the Nazis. Everything else went through.
It's interesting. Like, you know, I kind of feel like if I was going to be objective about it, I would describe Witch Trials as the worst Fall album. Not because of a lack of quality per se, but it's the least fall-ish of their albums. You know, it's this weird prog punk oddity. And so it's interesting. And yeah, I feel like there's been a terrible disservice to this nation's saving grace. I feel like LA, Gut of the Quantifier, My New House. I'm not sure what other ones didn't go through. What You Need went through.
What You Need's out.
Bombast.
Spoiled Victorian Child's out. LA, Got to the Quantifier. Or My New House went through in the end.
Yeah, you see, now, as far as I'm concerned, What You Need should have gone through. Bombast, I didn't like it at first, and that's because I'm a fool. Now I like it. It should have gone through. Yeah, Spoiled Victorian, ditto. But I have the feeling Spoiled Victorian had some stiff competition.
Yeah.
Brendan tried to get it through, but you got outnumbered.
I almost got it back in the second chance, but everyone was like, "No, it's not good." Shit. I will give you that it's not very fall-ish because of that riff, but you know, love it. So yeah, it's interesting just to crunch that stuff. But yeah, we do come to the end, and so they were supposed to play a gig on the 30th of November 2017 in Bristol, and Mark finally couldn't make it. And this is such a sweet message that was sent. And really, you know, Smith was really quite private, and we didn't, even when we read Renegade, we didn't get much of a glimpse behind the curtain. And so this is, you know, a heartfelt message. Probably be written by ChatGPT now, wouldn't it? But a message to all from Marky Smith, the Fall group. As I, PR Rupert, leave Bristol with my tail between my legs, I wish to give my great apologies to everybody. This idiotic idea to do both shows was purely my idea against the advice of Pamela and the Fall group, agent and promoter. Hope to replace shows within 4 to 6 weeks. In the interim, we have 8 new songs ready to go, and we will try to let you hear a few before Christmas. From head patients to you, the patients, I love you all, but I cannot embrace you all. Marky Smith. Mark Edward Smith, 5th of March, 1957, 24th of January, 2018. I'd say let's have a minute's silence, but the editing software would cut it out, so that's why I just stop.
Well, I think that's a reference to Prince Rupert, isn't it? I've just finished reading history of the 17th century, all the stuff. I think that's a reference to Prince Rupert, which would be fitting, wouldn't it, given his interest in all things Curious Orange.
Absolutely. And then it was interesting in doing this that I came across his teeth, which apparently Badly Drawn Boy left in the car. If you remember the story, that Smith left his teeth in Badly Drawn Boy's car, and at some point the car was sold with the teeth still in it. When I'm dead and gone, my vibrations will live on in vibes on vinyl through the years. People will dance to my waves. Beautiful. Well, we did it. You know, that's the end of the podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone. We shall be back in a few weeks with round 2, amazingly. But first, we're going to indulge ourselves with a non-fall episode, probably. No promises. Anything to add from the chattering crowd over there?
Tumbleweed.
Well, I think we're 2 years into this journey now, aren't we? And we've got a few ideas up our sleeves of things that we'd like to do. We'd like to talk do a bit more of the futures and past stuff. And obviously we are continuing the fall live stuff for the Patreons. And we've got another couple of ideas that we're going to try and record of adjacent stuff on the Patreon stuff. But I was wondering as well if it's, as well as doing a big thank you to everybody who listens in, who kind of makes it worthwhile for us to do, if they've got any ideas or suggestions of things that they want us to pick up as part of the story. Now we've done the overall history and the overall albums. Are there any other aspects that I can look into? Because it would be interesting, wouldn't it, to see if there's anything.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah,
I'm hoping James Cameron will be in touch.
Is he a fan?
Now that I'm just hoping he'll get serious about safe exploration of deep things.
Satire. All right. Good work, everyone. See you all. Bye.
Cheers.
Ta-ra.
We're gonna have to